This is a story I've been working on for a while, Jaiyana and the Sea. It's only 1,700 words long, so not quite flash fiction, but shorter than 2,000 words. This story I wrote for my wife for her birthday, which is coming up. So I've already printed it out and stapled it, and it'll be one of her gifts. Um, she likes it when I make things, and one of the things I can make is stories. Also, I have an anniversary coming up, so I'll make one for that. I also got her some real presents too, so don't think I'm trying to get out of taking care of my wife. I know she is. She's wonderful because essentially she's the reason I'm still alive. If it wasn't for her, I would have never figured out all the transplant stuff. And so, really, she's the reason that I got a kidney transplant and literally the reason I'm still alive. So, I try to convey some of my feelings for her in some of these stories. And I look forward to letting her read this for her birthday. All right, this is Jaiyana and the Sea by Jay Wilburn. The city was on its final breath. Even the rich center of commerce and city life was dying under the pressures from outside and from within. The walls crumbled, providing gaps through which any enemy might attack. The defenses fell, the armies broke apart without organized leadership. Prophets predicted the city's doom, but any common man could have prophesied as much without the aid of any magic or oracle. Perhaps they should have turned to her in the old ways much sooner. Everything makes sense in retrospect. Finding faith in the midst of disaster tends to be far harder than most people in easier times ever think. As the bright and heavy-laden ships of the enemy raced through the undefended harbor and approached the land without fear, everyone throughout the city prepared for the end. Then she rose up. As in legends, few people still believed. Even those who witnessed this miracle from the decks of the invading ships and from the ruins of the city in active decay could not believe the truth of what they saw unfolding before their eyes. She was a spirit of water and something greater than the tales about her could ever capture. Water and waves turned to solid muscle. Her body, armor, and hair took on the shades of things that sit in water. Before that day, everyone associated those greens, browns, and grays with neglect and ruin. But she displayed her colors and strength. Her wings unfolded behind her. Some saw the feathered wingspan of an angel. Others saw the leathery wings of a dragon or demon. A few claimed they were the gossamer wings of a dragonfly or a fairy, but writ large across the sky as she rose to her full height. One man, with eyes dimmed by age and sun, only saw the soft curved shape of wings outlined by bent wire, with nothing of true substance within them. Maybe he was closer to the truth with his blurry vision. He might have seen through the illusion to what was made for the benefit of attackers' terror. Whatever they saw, a nymph, a goddess, a statue come to life covered in green and gray growths, or some avenging spirit from out of the city's cultish past. However she was defined, she turned her back on the suffering city. As she waded calf deep into the shallows of the harbor, she hadn't turned her back. Oh, there's a typo. I'm going to have to reprint this. She hadn't turned her back on the desperate city in rejection, but in protection. She waded out into the deeper water to meet the ships on the previously calm surface. They wasted no time in gathering their archers along the decks to fling a hail of arrows in an arc toward her. What hit did hurt. She felt all the pain. She had been feeling the pain of the crumbling city for some time. That pain, the new pain of arrows, did not stop her and did not slow her. As she reached for the vanguard of attack ships, they set the arrows on fire and sent tar-covered stones spinning toward her, stoking the flames around them. As they struck, she shook with impacts, but every burning thing sizzled out and fell to the piles of ancient debris at the bottom of the harbor. She did not laugh. None of this was funny. It was foolish, however, for those attacking fleets to think they could bring down Jaiyana and the sea with fire. Everything, especially out on the water like this. Her fist crumpled the front of the forward ships. Boards buckled, bent, and broke as the unfurled sails brought them into her closed hands and hard knuckles. It wasn't enough to sink them all, but some crew bailed over the sides on their own. She saw the thing finish by flipping the damaged ships over like toys and pushed them under until they took on enough water to sink the rest of the way on their own. The other ships rallied and pressed the fight. It could have been courage, anger over their drowned friends, or the reality that this fleet had not known nor understood defeat for generations. They tried to fire projectiles tied to ropes in order to tangle her and bring her down. It might have been slightly less foolish than using fire against a water spirit, but the ropes were equally ineffective as with any attempt to capture water. She stomped down on the offending ships and chopped through there with her hands. These broken vessels required no additional help with sinking. They all went down quickly and easily. Those in the back of the fleet made to turn, but she did not stop. She broke more of them apart, sending their crews to their doom. Those who still lived spied a mighty sword strapped to her hip. The great terror was that she never reached to draw it as she defeated them all. One ship remained as it rushed for the mouth of the harbor. She stood straddled over it and let them sail out even though they were still in her range for quite some time, and they suspected that there was nowhere in the sea she could not reach them if she so desired. Not a man aboard that last ship doubted that they only lived through the day by her choice. They were kept alive to warn the rest. Unfortunately for everyone, those warnings were not taken by anyone not there to see that great defeat. She turned to face the cheers of the people in the city, who felt hope and joy for the first time that they could remember in many years. She did not cast away their worship, but she did not swell with it either. As she crossed the harbor into the shallows, she came apart as if melting into great torrents of water in the sun. Her face came apart last, and many people remembered that image the most as she vanished back into the realm of water. The months that followed brought renewal to the city. People returned to hope, and healthy trade both on land and sea returned with it. People began to forget the threats of the past, with so doing, they did not find spare funds from the wealth returning to the city to rebuild the walls, defenses, and army. As such, in time, both the people of the city and other empires forgot that day of rescue. A new army crossed the land toward the undefended inland side of the city. The new invaders had benefited greatly from the destruction of another empire's fleet. They also figured if the rumors of a water goddess in the harbor were remotely true, she would be powerless upon the land. The people cowered in fear behind what remained of the city walls. She rose from the water again. This time she stepped out of the waves and walked through the widest avenue of the city, bringing thunder and quakes with every step. More sections of the city wall fell. The water sheeted off her like heavy rain. She walked beyond the perimeter of the city, turned the desert into mud before her. Half the chariots turned to flee as the others tested the power of Jaiyana out of the sea. This time she drew her sword. They tried fire again, and it hurt, but it did not work. More decided to flee, but it was too late. Her blade saw them ended. More witnesses escaped this time, and merchant traders within the city that day took the tales of Jaiyana and her city all throughout the world. There was a great debate about rebuilding walls, but those with money to do so argued that it wasn't needed. Then something more terrible rose from the sea. This was a creature of water as well. It crawled over the surface using appendages that were not quite tentacles. No one who watched its charge that day could focus their vision upon it enough to describe this entity well. As it drew closer and closer, many feared Jaiyana had abandoned them for not taking care of themselves, for taking her for granted. Her powerful hands broke the surface at the last moment and seized the unseeable creature by the blurry pieces of its body. The monster roared and buildings fell. It reared back and thrashed, trying to break free of her. It pulled Jaiyana, who herself was only half formed, out of the water. In their fight, the waves washed through many parts of the city, threatening many lives. They pushed one another back and forth for hours of struggle. Sometimes Jaiyana pushed the terrible beast out into the deep sea. Then the monster pushed back until it appeared they would break over the harbor and wipe out the entire city. This prolonged battle continued for days into weeks. Weeks of terrible rain off the combatants' bodies turned into months of flooding. Jaiyana finally caught a moment to draw her sword, and the people, who had set about building levees to hold back waves, watched with hope. The beast knocked the sword from her grasp, and it sunk below the waves, becoming one with the sea again. The people returned to building their defenses. Those with money finally relented to the pressure of the people, and they paid to have the walls rebuilt. As the war continued between Jaiyana and the monster, the wealthy members of the city's upper class agreed to fund the training and equipping of a new army. Jaiyana finally gave up on trying to defeat the monster. She did not give up on protecting the city, though. With her mighty arms, she wrapped up the creature. As it struggled to get free, she held tight and took it under the water. The sea grew furious and dangerous for all the years that followed. Only the most skilled sailors from the city could manage those waters. Both the monster and the city's great protector were creatures of water. Being under the surface would not end either of them. She held on, though, and kept the terrible entity from having its dark way with her city. The people knew she held the beast back, but that left many other threats that they were responsible for holding back themselves. They went forward generation to generation in the spirit and courage of Jaiyana of the Sea and of their city.